In a small town where everyone knew everyone, there lived a little girl named Anya. She was 7 years old, big brown eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 unspoken words. Her hair was always tied in 2 messy braids, and she had a habit of looking down at her shoes whenever someone tried to talk to her. People often said she was the quietest child they had ever seen. But what they did not understand was that her silence was not a choice. It was a shield. Anya was not like other children her age. While they ran around the playground laughing and shouting, she sat alone on a bench near the old oak tree. While they raised their hands in class, eager to answer questions, she pressed herself deeper into her chair, hoping the teacher would not notice her. While they made friends easily, she struggled to say even a simple hello. It was as if there was an invisible wall between her and the rest of the world, and no matter how hard she tried, she could not break through it. The reason was something she had no control over. Anya had a stutter. Every time she tried to speak, the words got stuck somewhere between her heart and her lips. They came out broken, repeated, tangled, and every time that happened, she saw the looks on people's faces. Some were confused. Some were impatient. And some, especially the children at school, thought it was funny. They would mimic her, stretching out their words the same way hers got stretched. Turning her pain into their entertainment, she still remembered the day it all started, the day that changed everything. She was 5 years old, standing in front of her kindergarten class, trying to introduce herself. Her mother had practiced with her all morning. "Just say your name," her mother had told her with a warm smile. "That is all you have to do. You have a beautiful name. Let them hear it." But when Anya opened her mouth, nothing came out the way it was supposed to. The first letter of her name stretched on and on, like a car stuck in mud, refusing to move forward. The children started giggling. One boy in the back made a face and copied her, making the whole class burst into laughter. The teacher tried to help, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder, but by then, the damage was done. Anya ran out of the classroom with tears streaming down her cheeks, her small heart shattered into pieces. From that day on, she decided it was better to stay quiet. If she did not speak, no one could laugh at her. If she did not try, she could not fail. It was a sad logic for such a young mind, but it felt like the only way to survive in a world that seemed determined to remind her of her flaws. Her parents watched their daughter disappear into herself, and it broke their hearts in ways they could never express. Her father, a hard-working man who drove a delivery truck to make ends meet, did not know how to fix this. He was good with his hands, good with machines, but feelings were something he never learned to repair. He would sit at the dinner table, watching his daughter push food around her plate in silence and feel completely helpless. Her mother, who worked long shifts at a local grocery store, tried everything she could think of. She bought books about building confidence in children. She spoke to teachers and doctors. She held Anya close every night and whispered that everything would be okay, that she was perfect just the way she was, but nothing seemed to help. The world outside was too loud, too cruel. Anya kept shrinking away from it. It's becoming smaller and smaller with each passing day. School became a daily battle she had to fight alone. The classroom felt like a place where she did not belong. During group activities, no one wanted to be her partner because she never talked. During lunch, she sat at the corner of a long table, eating her sandwich in silence while other kids chatted and shared jokes just a few feet away. Sometimes, a group of boys would walk past her and say things like, "Hey, why do you talk like that? Or can you even say your own name without getting stuck?" They laughed every time, and every time. A small piece of Enya's spirit crumbled and fell away. Teachers noticed, of course. They called her shy. They said she needed to come out of her shell. They wrote notes to her parents saying she was a bright student but needed to participate more. But no one really understood what it felt like to be trapped inside your own voice, to have so much to say, but no way to say it without becoming a joke. At home, things were not much better. Family gatherings were the worst. Relatives would pinch her cheeks and ask her questions, waiting for answers that never came smoothly. When she tried to speak, they would finish her sentences for her, thinking they were helping, but only making her feel more invisible. Some of them whispered to her parents when they thought she was not listening. "Is something wrong with her?" they asked. "Have you taken her to a specialist? Why does she not talk like normal children?" Her parents always defended her, but Anya could see the worry in their eyes. She felt like a problem that needed to be solved, a burden that everyone had to carry. Her bedroom became her only safe place in the entire world. It was a tiny room with faded yellow walls and a window that looked out at a small garden where her mother grew tomatoes. There, she did not have to pretend to be something she was not. There, she did not have to try and fail. She would sit on her bed for hours, hugging a stuffed rabbit her grandmother had given her before she passed away 2 years ago. That rabbit was her only friend, the only one who never judged her, never laughed, never looked at her with pity or confusion. But there was something else in that room. Something hidden in the corner waiting to be discovered. Something that would change everything. Covered with a dusty cloth sat an old keyboard. It had belonged to her grandmother. A woman Anya barely remembered, but somehow deeply loved through the stories her mother told. The keyboard was ancient, with keys that had turned yellow with age. Some of them did not even work anymore, making no sound when pressed. But to Anya, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. A treasure from someone who had loved her before she even knew what love meant. One night, when she could not sleep because the cruel words from school kept playing in her head, she pulled off the cloth and pressed a single key. The sound that came out was soft and gentle, like a whisper meant only for her ears. She pressed another key, then another. There was no stutter here. There was no judgment. There was no laughter. The notes came out exactly the way she wanted them to, pure and whole and free. From that night on, Anya began to play. She did not know any songs. She did not have a teacher. She simply let her fingers move across the keys, creating melodies that matched her feelings. When she was sad, the music was slow and heavy, like rain falling on a cold window. When she felt a rare moment of hope, the notes danced a little brighter, like sunlight breaking through clouds. Her parents heard her playing sometimes. Late at night when they thought she was asleep, they would stand outside her door, listening in silence, amazed by the sounds coming from their quiet little girl. They did not interrupt her. They understood somehow that this was her way of speaking, her way of telling the world everything she could never say out loud. Weeks turned into months. Anya's playing grew better and better. She started watching videos of famous pianists on her mother's old phone, studying how they moved their hands, how they closed their eyes and felt the music flowing through them. She could not afford lessons, but she taught herself note by note, song by song, practicing until her small fingers ached. Her favorite piece was something she heard in a movie once, a slow and beautiful melody that made her heart ache in the best way possible. The keyboard became her voice. The music became her words. And for the first time in her young life, Anya felt like maybe, just maybe, she had something to offer this world that had made her feel so small. She did not know it yet. But everything was about to change. A single piece of paper on the school notice board would set into motion a chain of events that no one saw coming. Not her parents, not her teachers, and certainly not the children who had laughed at her for so long. But that part of the story was still waiting to unfold. It was a Tuesday morning when Anya first saw the poster. She was walking through the school hallway, head down as always, trying to make herself as invisible as possible. The walls were covered with old artwork and faded notices that no one ever read. But this one was different. This one was bright yellow, with big red letters that seemed to jump off the paper. Annual School Talent Show. All students welcome. Show the world what you can do. Anna stopped in her tracks. Other children rushed past her, bumping her shoulders, not even noticing she was there. But she stood frozen, staring at those words like they were written just for her. Her heart began to beat faster. A strange feeling rose in her chest, something she had not felt in a very long time. It took her a moment to recognize what it was. It was hope. For the rest of that day, she could not focus on anything else. During math class, she stared at her notebook without seeing the numbers. During reading time, the words on the page blurred together. All she could think about was that yellow poster and what it might mean for someone like her. What if she could play her music on that stage? What if she could show everyone that she was more than the girl who could not speak properly? What if, for just one night, she could be seen instead of invisible? The thought scared her and excited her at the same time. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at the water below, wanting to jump, but terrified of the fall. When she got home that afternoon, her mother was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner. The smell of onions filled the small house. Anya sat down at the table and watched her mother work, trying to find the courage to say something. The words were there, inside her head, perfectly clear. But getting them out was a different battle altogether. Her mother noticed her sitting there and smiled. "How was school today?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. Anya shrugged, which was her usual answer. But today, she also reached into her backpack and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. She had torn the poster off the wall when no one was looking. Now she smoothed it out on the table and slid it toward her mother. Her mother picked it up and read it slowly. When she looked back at Anya, there was a question in her eyes. "A talent show," she said softly. "Are you thinking about entering?" Anya did not answer with words. She could not. But she nodded just once, and in that small movement was everything she could not say. Yes, she wanted to try. Yes, she was terrified. Yes, she needed her mother to understand, and her mother did understand. She always did. She put down the paper and knelt beside Anya's chair, taking her daughter's small hands in her own. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "What would you do?" she asked gently. "What would you show them?" Anya pointed toward her bedroom, toward the corner where the old keyboard sat waiting for her every night. Her mother's smile grew wider, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. She pulled Anya into a tight hug and whispered into her hair, "Then we will make it happen. I do not know how, but we will make it happen." That night, when Anya's father came home from work, exhausted and covered in dust from the road, her mother told him everything. Anya watched from the hallway, peeking around the corner as her parents talked in low voices. She saw her father's face change from confusion to concern to something that looked almost like fear. He was not a man who showed his emotions easily. He had grown up in a family where men did not cry, where feelings were kept locked away like old photographs in a drawer. But when he looked at Anya standing there in the hallway, she saw something break open in his eyes. He walked over to her, knelt down to her level, and put his rough, calloused hands on her shoulders. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked. His voice was gruff, but underneath it was a tenderness he rarely let anyone see. "It will be hard. People might not understand. Are you ready for that?" Anya looked into her father's tired eyes and nodded. She had never been more sure of anything in her life. Her father let out a long breath, then pulled her into a hug that nearly lifted her off the ground. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, then let us get to work." The next 6 weeks were the hardest of Anya's young life, but also the most beautiful. Every night after her homework was done and the dishes were washed, she would sit at her grandmother's keyboard and practice. Her fingers moved across the keys for hours, playing the same piece over and over until it lived inside her bones. She had chosen a song that meant everything to her. It was called Moonlight Sonata, written by a man named Beethoven, who had lived hundreds of years ago. Anya had first heard it in a movie her mother was watching late one night. The moment those notes filled the room, she felt like someone had reached into her chest and touched her heart. The music was sad and beautiful and full of longing, like it understood exactly what it felt like to be alone in a crowded world. Learning it was not easy. The song was complicated, with notes that twisted and turned in ways her small fingers struggled to follow. She did not have a teacher to guide her. She did not have sheet music to read from. All she had was her mother's old phone and a YouTube video of a famous pianist playing the piece. She watched that video hundreds of times. She studied the way the pianist's hands moved, the way his fingers curved over the keys, the way he closed his eyes and let the music carry him somewhere else. Then she would try to copy it, note by note, measure by measure. When she made mistakes, she went back and tried again. When her fingers cramped and ached, she stretched them out and kept going. Her parents did everything they could to support her. Her mother rearranged her work schedule so she could be home in the evenings. sitting quietly in the corner of Enya's room while she practiced. She never interrupted, never offered advice she was not qualified to give. She just sat there, a warm and steady presence. Letting her daughter know she was not alone, her father took on extra shifts at work, driving longer routes and coming home later than usual. Anya did not understand why until one evening, about 3 weeks before the talent show. When he came through the front door carrying something large and heavy wrapped in an old blanket, he set it down in the living room and pulled off the blanket with a shy smile. It was a keyboard, not new, but much better than the one Anya had been practicing on. All the keys worked. The sound was clear and bright. It even had a pedal that made the notes ring out longer, just like on a real piano. Anya stared at it with wide eyes, unable to believe what she was seeing. She looked at her father, then at her mother, then back at the keyboard. "Where did you get this?" her mother asked, her voice trembling. Her father shrugged like it was nothing, but Anya saw the exhaustion in his face, the new lines around his eyes. "A man at work was selling it," he said. "I talked him down to a fair price." She needed something better to practice on. Anya ran to her father and threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. She could not say thank you. The words stuck in her throat like they always did. But she held on tight, and she knew he understood. From that night on, her practice took on a new intensity. The better keyboard responded to her touch in ways the old one never could. She could hear every note clearly, could feel the music building and releasing like waves on a shore. The Moonlight Sonata began to sound less like a child learning and more like something real, something alive. But not everything was perfect. At school, the same children who had always teased her found out she had signed up for the talent show. They thought it was the funniest thing they had ever heard. "The girl who cannot even say her own name thinks she can perform on stage," one of them said loudly in the cafeteria. Another one made a cruel joke about how she would probably just stand there stuttering while everyone laughed. Anya heard every word. She felt each one like a small knife sliding between her ribs. There were moments when she wanted to quit, to tear up the registration form and pretend she had never seen that yellow poster. The fear was overwhelming, a dark wave that threatened to pull her under and never let go. But every night, when she sat down at her new keyboard and let her fingers find the first notes of the Moonlight Sonata, something inside her grew stronger. The music reminded her why she was doing this. It was not about proving anything to the kids who made fun of her. It was not about showing off or seeking attention. It was about finding a way to speak when her voice failed her. It was about showing the world who she really was, even if the world had never bothered to look. The night before the talent show, Anya could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she would either fly or fall. There was no in between. Her mother came into her room and sat on the edge of her bed. She did not say anything at first. She just stroked Enya's hair gently, the way she used to when Anya was very small and afraid of the dark. Then she leaned down and whispered something that Anya would carry with her for the rest of her life. "No matter what happens tomorrow," she said, "I want you to know that you are the bravest person I have ever known. You do not need to prove anything to anyone. You already make me proud every single day. But tomorrow, you are going to walk onto that stage and you are going to show them the girl I see. The girl with a heart full of music, the girl who never gave up, even when the whole world told her she should." Anya closed her eyes and felt a single tear roll down her cheek. For the first time in weeks, the fear did not feel so heavy. It was still there, waiting in the shadows. But now, there was something stronger standing beside it. Tomorrow would come whether she was ready or not. All she could do now was trust the music, trust herself, and hope that somehow it would be enough. The morning of the talent show arrived like any other morning, with sunlight streaming through the curtains and birds singing outside the window. But for Anya, nothing about this day felt ordinary. She woke up before her alarm, her eyes snapping open as if her body knew that something important was about to happen. Her stomach was already tight with nerves, twisted into knots that made it hard to breathe. She lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house waking up around her. She could hear her mother in the kitchen the clatter of pots and pans as she prepared breakfast. She could hear her father's heavy footsteps in the hallway, the creak of the bathroom door. Everything was so normal, so routine, but nothing would ever be the same after tonight. When she finally got out of bed, her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. She walked to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. The same face stared back at her, the same big brown eyes, the same messy hair. But today, there was something different in those eyes. It was fear, yes, but it was also something else. Something that looked almost like determination. Breakfast was quiet. Anya could barely eat. She pushed her eggs around her plate, took a few small bites of toast, and drank her orange juice in tiny sips. Her parents watched her with worried eyes but did not say much. They knew that words would not help right now. All they could do was be there, solid and steady, like two anchors holding her in place. School that day was a blur. Anya sat through her classes without hearing a single word the teachers said. Math problems floated past her. Reading passages meant nothing. All she could think about was the auditorium, the stage, the piano that would be waiting for her under those bright lights. Every time she thought about it, her heart would race and her palms would grow sweaty. During lunch, she sat alone as always, but today, the loneliness felt heavier. She watched the other children laughing and talking, living their normal lives, and wondered what it would feel like to be one of them, to speak without fear, to exist without constantly feeling like a burden. Maybe after tonight things would be different, or maybe after tonight things would be even worse. She did not know which possibility scared her more. The final bell rang at 3 o'clock, and Anya felt her stomach drop. The talent show was scheduled to start at 6. That gave her 3 hours to go home, get ready, and somehow find the courage to walk onto that stage. 3 hours that felt like both an eternity and no time at all. Her mother picked her up from school, something she rarely did because of work, but today was special. Today, nothing else mattered except being there for her daughter. They drove home in silence, the radio playing softly in the background. Neither of them knowing what to say. At home, Anya took a long bath. The warm water helped relax her muscles, but did nothing for the anxiety churning in her chest. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine the performance going well. She tried to picture herself sitting at the piano, playing beautifully, the audience listening in amazed silence. But every time she got to that part, her imagination would betray her. Instead of applause, she heard laughter. Instead of admiration, she saw mocking faces. Her mother had laid out a dress on her bed. It was simple but beautiful, pale blue with small white flowers embroidered along the hem. Her mother had stayed up late for several nights, sewing it by hand because they could not afford to buy something new. When Anya put it on and looked at herself in the mirror, she almost did not recognize the girl staring back at her. She looked older somehow. She looked ready, but she did not feel ready. Not even close. At 5:30, the family piled into their old car and drove to the school. The parking lot was already filling up with other families. Parents holding cameras, children in costumes running around with nervous excitement. Anya watched them through the window, her fingers gripping the fabric of her dress so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her father found a parking spot near the back, and they walked toward the school together. Anya between her parents, their hands warm and reassuring on her shoulders. The evening air was cool, carrying the smell of fresh-cut grass and the distant sound of music coming from inside the auditorium. Someone was doing a sound check. The show was almost ready to begin. Backstage was chaos. Children were everywhere, adjusting costumes, practicing dance moves, singing scales to warm up their voices. Teachers rushed around with clipboards, trying to keep everyone organized. The air was thick with hairspray and perfume, and the electric energy of dozens of nervous performers. Anya found a quiet corner and sat down on a folding chair, trying to make herself small. She watched the other kids with a mixture of envy and dread. They all seemed so confident, so sure of themselves. A group of girls in matching outfits practiced a dance routine, their movements perfectly synchronized. A boy with a guitar strummed chords and laughed with his friends. Everyone had someone to talk to, someone to share their nerves with. Everyone except her, A teacher came by with a list and checked her name. "You are number 14, the teacher said with a kind smile. "That means you will go on about halfway through the show. Just wait here and listen for your cue." Anya nodded, not trusting her voice to work even if she tried to use it. The minutes crawled by like hours. From her corner, Anya could hear the show beginning. The principal gave a welcome speech, her voice muffled through the backstage walls. Then the first act started, a boy playing drums, the rhythm shaking the floor beneath her feet. The audience clapped and cheered. The second act followed, then the third, then the fourth. Each round of applause felt like a countdown to her own moment of truth as the acts went on. Anya felt the fear growing inside her like a living thing. It wrapped around her chest, making it hard to breathe. It whispered terrible things in her ear. "You are going to fail. They are going to laugh at you. Everyone will see what a mess you are." She pressed her hands over her ears, trying to block out the voice, but it would not stop. She thought about running. The exit was right there, just a few steps away. She could slip out the door, find her parents in the audience, and tell them she could not do it. They would understand. They would take her home and hold her and tell her it was okay. No one would blame her for being afraid. But then she thought about her grandmother's keyboard, the one with the yellow keys and the missing notes. She thought about all those nights alone in her room, playing music that no one else could hear. She thought about her father working extra shifts, coming home exhausted, just so she could have a better instrument. She thought about her mother staying up late, sewing that beautiful blue dress stitch by stitch. She could not run. Not after everything they had done for her. Not after everything she had done for herself. "Number 14, a teacher called out. "You are up next." Anya stood on legs that felt like water. She walked toward the side of the stage where a curtain separated her from the audience. Through a small gap in the fabric, she could see the auditorium. It was packed. Every seat was filled. Parents sat with cameras ready. Children squirmed in their chairs. The stage lights were so bright they made her eyes water. The act before her finished. A girl who had sung a popular song, and the audience erupted in applause. The girl bounded off stage with a huge smile, high-fiving her friends as she passed. Then the principal's voice came over the speakers, announcing the next performer. "And now, please welcome Anya, who will be playing a piano piece for us tonight." There was a pause, a ripple of confusion in the audience. Anya could almost hear the whispers. "The quiet girl? The one who never talks? She is performing?" She stepped out from behind the curtain, and the stage lights hit her like a wave of heat. For a moment, she could not see anything. The audience was just a dark mass of shapes and shadows. Then her eyes adjusted, and she saw them. Hundreds of faces, all staring at her, waiting to see what she would do. She walked toward the piano, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The piano was beautiful, a real grand piano, black and shiny under the lights. It was so much bigger than the keyboard she had practiced on. The bench was too high when she sat down, and she had to adjust it, her small hands fumbling with the lever. The sound of the bench scraping against the floor seemed impossibly loud. Someone in the audience giggled, then someone else. A boy near the front, one of the kids who had teased her at school, leaned over to his friend and whispered something. They both laughed, not even trying to hide it. The laughter spread like ripples in a pond, quiet but impossible to ignore. Anya felt her face grow hot. Her hands trembled as she placed them on the keys. The piano felt cold beneath her fingers, unfamiliar and intimidating. She could not remember the first note. Her mind was completely blank, wiped clean by the fear that was now screaming inside her head. More laughter. A man somewhere in the back coughed impatiently. The silence between the laughs was worse than the laughs themselves, heavy and suffocating. Pressing down on her from all sides, she thought about her mother in the audience, probably clutching her father's hand, praying for her daughter to be okay. She thought about her father, who never cried, who kept his emotions locked away, probably fighting back tears at this very moment. She thought about her grandmother, who she barely remembered, but somehow loved with her whole heart. What would her grandmother say if she could see her now? The laughter continued. The whispers grew louder. Someone said maybe she forgot how to play, and a whole row of kids burst out laughing. The sound was like glass breaking. Sharp and cruel and cutting deep. Anya closed her eyes, and in the darkness behind her eyelids, she found something she had almost forgotten. She found the quiet of her bedroom at night, the soft glow of the moon through her window, the feel of her grandmother's keyboard beneath her fingers. She found the music waiting for her like an old friend, patient and kind and ready to speak when her voice could not. She took a deep breath, then another. The laughter faded into the background, becoming nothing more than noise. The faces disappeared, the lights disappeared. The whole world disappeared until there was nothing left but her and the piano and the music that lived inside her soul. Her fingers found the first note. She began to play. The first note rose from the piano like a whisper in a quiet room. It was soft, almost fragile, hanging in the air for just a moment before fading into silence. Then came the second note, and the third, each one building on the last, weaving together into something that felt less like music and more like a heartbeat. The laughter stopped. It did not fade slowly or trail off into awkward coughs. It simply stopped, as if someone had pressed a button and turned it off. The whispers died. The rustling of programs and the shifting of bodies and seats went silent. The entire auditorium seemed to hold its breath, waiting, listening, not quite believing what they were hearing. Anya did not notice any of this. Her eyes were still closed, her body swaying gently with the rhythm of the Moonlight Sonata. Fingers moved across the keys with a certainty she had never felt before, finding each note without hesitation, without doubt. It was as if the music had taken control, guiding her hands, telling her exactly where to go and what to do. In that moment, she was not the quiet girl who sat alone at lunch. She was not the child who could not say her own name without stumbling. She was not the burden, the problem, the one who needed to be fixed. She was something else entirely. She was the music, and the music was her. And together, they were speaking a language that everyone in that room could understand. The melody flowed through the auditorium like water through a dry riverbed, filling every corner, reaching every ear. It was sad and beautiful and full of longing, the kind of music that makes you think of things you have lost and people you miss and dreams you once had, but gave up on long ago. It was the sound of moonlight falling on an empty street. It was the sound of tears that never got cried. It was the sound of a little girl who had been silent for so long, finally finding a way to speak. In the third row, Inya's mother sat frozen, her hands pressed against her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She had heard her daughter play many times before, through the thin walls of their small house, in the quiet hours of the night when everyone else was supposed to be asleep, but she had never heard anything like this. This was different. This was Anya pouring her entire soul into those keys, holding nothing back, letting the world see who she really was for the very first time. Beside her, Tanya's father sat perfectly still. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the small figure at the piano. He was a man who had spent his whole life keeping his emotions locked away, buried so deep that sometimes he forgot they were there. But now, watching his daughter do something so brave, so impossibly brave, he felt something crack open inside his chest. A single tear rolled down his weathered cheek, but he did not wipe it away. He let it fall, a small surrender to the moment. The music grew more complex, the notes climbing higher, moving faster, building toward something that felt inevitable and overwhelming. Anya's small fingers danced across the keys with a speed and precision that seemed impossible for a child her age. She had practiced this piece hundreds of times, maybe thousands, until her hands knew every note by heart. But tonight, it was more than just practice. Tonight, it was like the music was alive, breathing through her, using her as a vessel to say all the things that words could never express. In the audience, people began to react in ways they did not expect. A woman in the back row, a stranger, who had come to watch her nephew perform, found herself thinking about her own mother, who had passed away the year before. The music reminded her of Sunday mornings in her childhood home, the smell of coffee, the sound of her mother humming while she cooked breakfast. She started crying and did not know why. A teenage boy sitting near the aisle, forced to attend by his parents, had spent the whole evening bored and restless. He had been scrolling through his phone during most of the performances, barely paying attention. But now his phone sat forgotten in his lap, the screen dark. He was leaning forward in his seat, completely captivated, feeling something stir inside him that he could not name. An elderly man in the front row, a retired music teacher who had seen countless performances over his long career, sat with his eyes closed and his hands folded in his lap. He knew this piece well. He had taught it to students many times, but he had never heard it played like this. Not with this much emotion, not with this much truth. This little girl, whoever she was, understood something about music that most people never learned in their entire lives. She understood that music was not about hitting the right notes. It was about meaning what you played. Even the children who had laughed at Anya just minutes before were now silent. The boy who had whispered cruel jokes to his friend sat motionless, his mouth slightly open, his eyes wide. He did not understand what he was feeling. It was strange and uncomfortable, like looking in a mirror and not liking what you saw. He had made fun of this girl so many times. He had called her names. He had laughed when she could not get her words out. And now here she was, doing something he could never do, being brave in a way he could never be. The music reached its peak, the notes swelling and crashing like waves against a shore. Anya's whole body moved with the melody, rising and falling, swaying like a tree in a storm. Her eyes were still closed, her face calm and focused, completely lost in a world where she was finally free. Free from the stutter that trapped her words. Free from the fear that had followed her like a shadow for as long as she could remember. Free from everything except the music and the feeling of her fingers on the keys. Then, slowly, the storm began to calm. The notes grew softer, gentler, like a voice lowering to a whisper. The frantic energy settled into something peaceful and still. It was like watching a sunrise after a long dark night, the light spreading slowly across the sky, promising that everything would be okay. Anya played the final passage with her eyes still closed, feeling every note deep in her chest. She thought about her grandmother, the woman who had given her the old keyboard. The woman she barely remembered, but somehow loved more than she could explain. She thought about all the nights she had spent alone in her room, playing music that no one could hear, dreaming of a moment exactly like this one. She thought about her parents, who had sacrificed so much, who had believed in her even when she did not believe in herself. And she thought about all the words she had never been able to say, all the feelings she had kept locked inside because her voice would not cooperate. All the time she had wanted to scream or laugh or whisper or shout, but could not get the sounds to come out right. Tonight, finally, she was saying all of it. Every note was a word. Every phrase was a sentence. Every movement of her hands was a story she had been waiting her whole life to tell. The audience sat in absolute silence, barely breathing, afraid to break the spell. Some people were crying openly now, tears running down their faces, not bothering to wipe them away. Others sat with their hands over their hearts, feeling something they could not explain. Something that had slipped past all their defenses and touched them somewhere deep and true. Even the teachers standing along the walls were affected. One of them, a young woman who had only started working at the school that year, felt her throat tighten with emotion. She had seen Anya in the hallways, had noticed how the other children treated her, had felt helpless to do anything about it. Now she was watching this same girl transform in front of her eyes, becoming someone powerful and beautiful and impossible to ignore. It was the kind of moment that reminded her why she had wanted to become a teacher in the first place. The principal, standing near the back of the auditorium with her clipboard clutched to her chest, had organized this talent show for 15 years. She had seen children sing and dance and perform magic tricks. She had seen nervous breakdowns and forgotten lines and proud parents crying happy tears. But she had never seen anything like this. She had never felt a room change so completely, so totally in the space of a few minutes. This little girl with the messy braids and the stutter that made other children laugh was doing something miraculous. And everyone in the room knew it. The music slowed even further, each note stretching out, lingering in the air like the last light of a setting sun. Anya could feel the end approaching, could feel the final notes waiting for her just ahead. She did not want it to stop. For the first time in her life, she felt completely at peace, completely whole, completely herself. She wished she could stay in this moment forever, wrapped in the music, safe from all the cruelty and confusion of the outside world. But all songs must end, all moments must pass. That is what makes them precious. Anya opened her eyes for the first time since she had started playing. The stage lights were still bright, but they no longer felt harsh or frightening. They felt warm, like the sun on her face on a summer afternoon. She looked out at the audience, at all those faces she could barely see through the glare. She felt something new rising in her chest. It was not fear, it was not shame, it was not the desperate need to disappear that had followed her for so long. It was courage. Her fingers found the final notes of the Moonlight Sonata. She played them slowly, deliberately, savoring each one like the last bite of something sweet. The melody descended, note by note, until only one remained. The very last note. The end of everything she had worked for, hoped for, dreamed of. She pressed the key. The note rang out through the auditorium, pure and clear and impossibly beautiful. It hung in the air for a long moment, suspended between silence and sound, between the world that had been and the world that was about to be. Then it faded. The music stopped, and Anya sat alone on the stage, her small hands resting on the keys, waiting to see what would happen next. The silence that followed was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was not the uncomfortable silence of a classroom waiting for her to finish stuttering through a sentence. It was not the cruel silence of children deciding whether to laugh or walk away. It was something else entirely. It was the silence of a room full of people who had just witnessed something extraordinary and did not yet have the words to describe it. Anya sat perfectly still, her heart pounding in her chest, her breath shallow and quick. She did not know what to do. She did not know if she should stand up or stay seated or run off the stage before anyone could say anything. The fear was starting to creep back in, whispering that she had made a mistake, that any second now the laughter would return and everything would go back to the way it had always been, but the laughter did not come. And in that endless, terrifying, beautiful silence, something else happened instead. A single clap broke the silence. It came from somewhere in the back of the auditorium, loud and sharp, like a crack of thunder. Then another joined it, and another. Within seconds, the entire room erupted into applause that shook the walls and rattled the windows. People rose from their seats, one by one, then row by row, until everyone was standing. The sound was overwhelming, a wave of noise that crashed over Anya and left her breathless. She sat frozen at the piano, unable to move, unable to believe what was happening. This was not polite clapping. This was something else entirely. This was hundreds of people telling her without words that they had heard her, that they had truly heard her. Her mother was the first to reach the stage. She ran down the aisle, tears streaming down her face, and pulled Anya into her arms so tightly that the little girl could barely breathe. Her father followed close behind, his eyes red and wet, his strong arms wrapping around both of them. They stood there together, small family holding on to each other while the world cheered around them. After the show, something unexpected happened. The boy who had laughed the loudest, the one who had made cruel jokes about her stutter, walked up to Anya in the crowded hallway. His eyes were fixed on the floor, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He looked smaller somehow, like the meanness had drained out of him and left nothing but a nervous kid behind. "I am sorry," he said quietly. His voice cracked on the words. "That was the most amazing thing I have ever seen. I did not know you could do that. I did not know anyone could do that." Anya looked at him for a long moment. She thought about all the times he had hurt her, all the words that had cut like knives. She could have walked away. She could have ignored him the way he had ignored her humanity for so long. But instead she did something that surprised them both. She nodded. And then she smiled. Not because she forgave him completely, but because she understood something important. His cruelty had come from not knowing her. And now, finally, he had seen who she really was. That night, as Anya lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the laughter, the music, the silence, the applause. It all felt like a dream, too big and too beautiful to be real. But it was real, and it had changed everything. She still had her stutter. She still struggled with words. But now she knew something she had not known before. Her voice was never broken. It had simply been waiting for the right way to be heard. Some people speak with words. Some people speak with music. And some people, like Anya, speak with both. She closed her eyes and smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, she was enough. She had always been enough.